August's golden fields give way to something entirely different, a space that seems to exist more in concept than in physical reality. Walls materialize around Father Time in February, but they are walls made of knowledge itself, constructed from books and scrolls and tablets and every form of recorded information that has ever existed. September's library is infinite in a way that makes even eternity seem finite by comparison. Shelves stretch upward and outward in all directions, including some directions that shouldn't technically exist. Every book ever written is here. Every story ever told, every fact ever recorded, every memory ever preserved. The library contains not just what is known, but what was known and has since been forgotten, what might have been known and what will be known in futures yet to unfold. The air itself feels heavy with accumulated wisdom. Every breath seems to carry the dust of ages, the scent of old paper and older parchment and ancient clay tablets baking in long-vanished sun. The light in this place is amber and warm, the color of late afternoon when the day begins its slow descent toward evening, and every surface glows with the soft radiance of knowledge waiting to be discovered or rediscovered or finally released. September himself sits at a massive desk in what might be the center of the library, though the concept of center seems meaningless in a space this vast. He wears robes of brown and amber, scholar's clothing, practical and comfortable. His desk is covered with open books, unfurled scrolls, stacks of papers covered in cramped writing. He is reading and writing simultaneously, one hand turning pages while the other takes notes, his mind clearly working through multiple threads of thought at once. He looks up as Father Time and February approach, and his eyes are thoughtful behind simple spectacles. "Ah," he says, his voice quiet but carrying easily in the library's acoustically perfect space. "Father Time, welcome to the accumulated memory of existence. Welcome to the place where everything that ever happened is recorded, preserved, remembered." He gestures to the infinite shelves around them. Impressive, is it not? Overwhelming, Father Time admits. How do you manage it all? How do you organize infinity? September's smile is gentle. That is precisely the question you are here to answer. Or rather, to understand that you cannot answer it. No one can, not even me, and this is my realm. He stands and leads them deeper into the library, along aisles lined with books whose titles shift and change as they walk past, as if the library itself cannot decide how to categorize its infinite contents. "Here is what I have learned," September says as they walk, "in my long tenure as keeper of autumn's accumulated wisdom. Memory is precious. Knowledge matters. The past deserves to be honored and preserved. But," he stops and turns to face Father Time directly, "but not everything can be saved. Not everything should be saved. Trying to preserve everything equally is the same as preserving nothing meaningfully." He pulls a book from a nearby shelf at random. Its cover is worn, its pages yellowed with age. "This book," he says, "contains the complete record of a single day in the life of a farmer who lived 3,000 years ago. Every thought he had, every action he took, every word he spoke, every meal he ate. It is comprehensive, detailed, utterly complete, and it is also..." He pauses, considering. "It is also suffocating, because while some moments of that day mattered, most of them did not. Some memories deserve to be kept sharp and clear, others need to be allowed to fade, and some should be actively released, not because they don't matter, but because holding them prevents us from being present to what matters now. Father Time feels a chill run through him, despite the library's warm air. Are you saying that some moments should be forgotten? That some of what I have held should simply be let go? Permanently?
I am saying, September responds carefully, that there is a difference between honoring the past and being imprisoned by it, between remembering what matters and clutching desperately at every passing moment as if losing any detail would mean losing everything. He replaces the book and pulls another. This one contains the name of every person who died on a particular battlefield. Names, only names, hundreds of them, thousands, and they matter. Of course they matter. Each name represents a life lived, a story told, a person loved and lost. But if I tried to carry the full weight of every story behind every name, if I demanded that each death be remembered with equal intensity and detail, I would collapse under the weight. The library would collapse. He places this book back as well and continues walking. Memory is not about perfect preservation, Father Time. Memory is about choosing what to keep close and what to hold lightly, what to examine frequently and what to trust to general impression, what to honor with specificity and what to release with gratitude. And this is perhaps the hardest wisdom of all. Letting go of specific memories is not betrayal of what happened. It is the only way to carry forward the essential truth of what mattered. They arrive at a reading room within the vast library, a cozy space with comfortable chairs and a fireplace burning with flames that seem to be made of gentle amber light. September gestures for Father Time to sit, and he does, feeling suddenly exhausted, not from physical effort, but from the weight of what he is being asked to understand. When you transform at midnight, September says, settling into the chair opposite, when you become memory rather than present, you cannot carry forward every specific moment of this year. It is not possible. The new year needs room to create its own moments, and if you insist on clutching every detail of what has been, you leave no space for what will be. Then what do I keep? Father Time asks, and his voice trembles slightly. If I cannot keep everything, how do I choose? What stays and what goes? What gets preserved and what gets released? September steeples his fingers thoughtfully. That is the question every memory must answer, and the answer is always the same. You keep the essence, you keep the meaning, you keep the lessons learned and the wisdom gained, and the emotional truth of what mattered. You release the 10,000 trivial details that don't change that truth. You let go of the perfect preservation and trust in the imperfect but meaningful impression. He stands and goes to a special shelf that seems to glow with particular warmth. From it, he pulls a single book that looks different from all the others. Its cover is simple leather, unmarked, and its pages are blank except for a handful of entries written in elegant script. This is my own memory book, September says, the record of what I choose to keep from all the Septembers I have witnessed. See how thin it is? See how much space remains blank? I have chosen to keep only the moments that changed something, that taught something, that mattered in a way that continues to ripple forward. The rest, all the ordinary moments, the routine passages, the mundane details, I have released them with gratitude, trusting that having experienced them was enough, that I do not need to clutch them forever to honor their existence. He hands the book to Father Time, who opens it carefully. The entries are brief but profound. A sunset that taught him about letting go, a conversation that changed his understanding of wisdom, a moment of laughter shared with August in the fields, a recognition of beauty in something dying gracefully. Each entry is specific enough to recall, but general enough to carry lightly. "You must make your own book," September says gently. "As you transform at midnight, as you become memory of this year rather than its present, you must choose what to carry forward in detail and what to trust to general impression. This is not forgetting, Father Time. This is curating. This is the difference between a hoarder who clutches everything and a curator who knows that meaningful preservation requires thoughtful selection." Father Time closes the book carefully and hands it back. "I am afraid to choose," he admits. "What if I release something important? What if I let go of a moment that mattered and then it's truly gone forever?" "Then it is gone," September says simply. "And that is sad, and it is also natural, and it is also necessary. You cannot save everything, Father Time. The library taught me that. Even with infinite shelves, even with endless capacity, trying to preserve everything with equal intensity means preserving nothing with real meaning. You must choose. And yes, you might choose imperfectly, and that imperfection is part of being finite, even when you are also eternal." He stands and returns his memory book to its special shelf, and then reaches into his robes. What he pulls out looks like a small book made of compressed light, its pages fluttering even though there is no wind, its covers opening and closing as if breathing.
"The ninth essence," he says, "the book of wisdom. It contains the understanding that wisdom is knowing what to keep and what to release. That memory cannot and should not preserve everything. That letting go of specific details while keeping essential truth is not betrayal, but the only way to carry forward what truly matters. Carry this with you, Father Time, and trust yourself to choose wisely when the moment comes." The book dissolves into light and flows into Father Time's palm, joining the other 8 essences. As it does, he feels something settling in his mind, not certainty, but acceptance of uncertainty. Not confidence that he will choose perfectly, but permission to choose imperfectly, and trust that his choices will be good enough. "Thank you, September," he says quietly. "This may be the hardest lesson yet. It is one thing to accept that I must let go. It is another to accept that I must choose what to let go, knowing I might choose wrongly." September nods understandingly. "Yes, it is hard, but you are ready for it now, ready to move into the final stages of transformation. October waits, and with him comes the facing of your own mortality, not as abstract concept, but as imminent reality. He will teach you that death is not erasure, but rest, that endings, when they come in their proper time, are not tragedies, but completions. Go now. Only 3 more lessons remain before midnight." Father Time and February leave the library, and as they do, Father Time looks back at the infinite shelves, the endless books, the overwhelming abundance of recorded memory. He feels both smaller and larger than before. Smaller because he understands now that he cannot hold everything. Larger because he understands that he doesn't need to. The cosmic clock shows 3 hours until midnight, 3 more essences to gather, 3 more lessons to learn. The journey moves now into its final stages toward November's threshold and December's frost and the ultimate transformation that waits at the stroke of 12.
The transition from September's library to October's realm is gradual, like the slow fading of day into night, like the gentle descent from late afternoon into twilight. The amber light grows deeper, richer, taking on shades of orange and red and deep purple. The air becomes cooler, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves, the particular smell of things entering their graceful decline. October's forest is beautiful in the way that dying things can be beautiful, when death comes naturally and in its proper time. The trees are aflame with color, reds and oranges, yellows and purples, every shade of autumn's palette. Leaves drift down constantly, a slow, gentle rain of gold and crimson, carpeting the ground in layers of soft color that crunch pleasantly underfoot. The sunlight, what remains of it, filters through the thinning canopy in shafts of dusty gold, illuminating the falling leaves like spotlights picking out individual dancers in the air. Everything here is dying, and yet everything is so extraordinarily beautiful that dying seems not like tragedy, but like art, like purpose, like the natural and graceful conclusion to a story well told. October himself is difficult to see at first. He blends with the twilight, with the long shadows, with the spaces between light and dark. When he finally becomes visible, Father Time sees that he is wrapped in robes of rust and gold and deep purple, autumn's deepest colors. Leaves fall from his hair as he moves, and his shadow stretches longer than shadows should, as if reaching ahead toward the darkness that is coming. He is beautiful in a bittersweet way, carrying within him both the glory of autumn's colors and the sadness of approaching winter, both the satisfaction of completion and the melancholy of endings. "Father Time," he says, and his voice is like wind through bare branches, like leaves settling onto still water. "Welcome to the dying light. Welcome to the space where endings become visible, where death approaches not with violence, but with quiet inevitability." He gestures to a path through the forest, and they begin to walk. All around them, the forest continues its slow transformation. Trees release their leaves one by one, not all at once in a storm, but gradually, peacefully, each leaf falling when its time has come. Squirrels gather acorns, preparing for winter. Birds that will migrate south call to one another, organizing their journeys. Everything in this realm knows that endings approach, and yet nothing seems panicked or desperate. There is acceptance here, preparation, a kind of peaceful readiness. "You have learned much on your journey," October says as they walk. "You have learned to grieve and to laugh, to fight your shadow self, and to plant seeds you'll never see bloom. You have learned to marry opposites and to descend from peaks, and to cut away what must be separated and to choose what to remember. But there is one lesson you have not yet faced directly, though it underlies all the others. You must learn to face your own death." Father Time stops walking. "I am time itself," he says. "Time does not die." "You are correct," October agrees. "Time does not die, but you, the you that you have been, the identity you have carried, the role you have played, that you must die at midnight, must stop being, must transform into something so different that calling it by the same name would be misleading. And you must make peace with that death, must learn to see it not as tragedy, but like natural completion, before you can truly let go." He leads them to a clearing where a single tree stands. It is ancient, this tree, its trunk thick and gnarled with age, its branches mostly bare now, only a few stubborn leaves still clinging to the highest twigs. At its base, Comfortable in the roots sits a figure that Father Time recognizes with a shock of understanding. It is another timekeeper, one who came before Father Time himself, one who held the hours before passing them on millennia ago. He looks peaceful, this ancient predecessor, his eyes closed, his breathing slow and shallow, clearly approaching his final rest.
"This is the time before time," October says quietly. "Your predecessor. He has been here since he let go of his burden, since he transformed from present into memory. He has lived all these ages in peace, at rest, finally free of the weight he carried for so long. And now, at last, he prepares for his final transformation, from memory into something even more foundational, into the very fabric of existence itself." The time before time opens his eyes, and they are kind and tired and utterly at peace. When he speaks, his voice is barely a whisper, but every word carries the weight of profound understanding. "Do not fear death, brother," he says to Father Time. "I feared it once as you fear it now. I thought that letting go would mean ceasing to exist, disappearing into nothing. But look at me. I let go, and I did not disappear. I transformed into memory, and for all these long ages I have rested here in October's forest, watching the cycles continue, the years turn, the seasons flow, and it has been peaceful, more peaceful than all my eternities of carrying the burden of present." He smiles faintly. "And now I prepare for another transformation, and I am not afraid. When a memory has been absorbed fully into the foundation of existence, when it has taught all its lessons and given all its gifts, it does not die, but dissolves into something even greater, into the possibility itself, into the fertile void from which new beginnings emerge. I will not be lost. I will become part of everything." Father Time kneels beside his predecessor, and for the first time he truly understands what he has been resisting. He has been afraid of death, yes, but more specifically, he has been afraid of irrelevance, of being forgotten, of no longer mattering. And here is proof that transformation is not erasure, that letting go leads to peace rather than oblivion, that death is not the end of mattering, but the beginning of mattering in a different way. "Thank you," he whispers to the time before time. "Thank you for showing me that this is not an ending to be feared, but a completion to be embraced." The Ancient One nods, already drifting back toward sleep, toward his final transformation. "Go in peace, brother. Teach the year that comes after yours what I have taught you. Death is rest, not erasure. Endings are completions, not failures. And transformation is not loss, but becoming something greater by releasing the need to remain what you were." October places a hand on Father Time's shoulder as they stand and walk away from the ancient tree. "He will pass completely before the night is through," October says quietly, "and the world will not mourn because his passing is natural, timely, and leads to something beautiful. So too will your transformation be. You will stop being present, yes, that identity will die, but you will become memory, and that is not lesser, but different. And eventually, when even memory has given all it can give, you too will dissolve into the foundation of possibility itself." They walk in silence for a while, through the dying forest, through the fading light, through October's realm where endings are beautiful and death is natural, and everything prepares with quiet grace for the rest of winter. Finally, October stops at the edge of his forest, where the trees grow thin and the shadows grow long, and the boundary approaches between autumn's dying and winter's deep sleep. "This is my essence," he says, and he reaches out to catch a single falling leaf, a perfect maple leaf, red as wine, shaped like a star. The 10th essence, the shadow of acceptance. It contains the wisdom that death is rest, not erasure, that endings, when they come in their proper time, are not tragedies, but completions, that facing your own mortality without flinching is not to give up on life, but to finally understand what life is. The leaf dissolves as it touches Father Time's palm, joining the other 9 essences, and as it does, Father Time feels something he has never felt before: readiness. Not eagerness exactly, not excitement, but a deep, profound readiness to complete what he has begun, to allow the transformation he has been resisting, to die as present so he can be born as memory. "I am ready," he says to October, and he means it. "I have feared death all this journey, but you and your predecessor have shown me that death is not the monster I imagined, but a kind of mercy, a release, a transformation into peace." October nods, satisfied. Then you are prepared for what comes next. November waits, and he is the darkest of all my siblings, the most mysterious, the most misunderstood. He guards the threshold between death and winter, between letting go and complete darkness. He will ask you to walk through the valley of lost time, and it will be the hardest passage yet. But you are ready now. You have learned all the lessons that can prepare you. Go. Father Time and February move forward into the deepening twilight, into the space where October's dying light gives way to November's threshold darkness. Behind them, the forest continues its graceful decline, leaves falling one by one, trees preparing for winter's sleep, everything accepting with quiet dignity the endings that must come. The cosmic clock shows 2 hours until midnight. 2 more essences remain. The journey approaches its conclusion, and Father Time walks forward now, not with fear, but with acceptance, not with resistance, but with readiness, not fleeing from his own ending, but moving toward it with the dignity of one who has finally learned that letting go is not defeat, but completion.
October's twilight forest fades gradually into something that is not quite a place at all. November's realm exists in the spaces between autumn and winter, between death and sleep, between the known and the unknown. It is the liminal space, the threshold, the doorway that must be passed through, but where no one wishes to linger. The light here is not absent, but it is failing. Gray dominates, not the soft gray of February's mist, but a deeper, heavier gray, the color of skies that have forgotten what blue looks like, of earth that has given up all pretense of warmth or welcome. The landscape is barren, stripped of color and comfort. Trees stand leafless and black against the gray sky, their branches like cracks in reality itself. The ground is hard and cold, neither frozen solid nor yielding, existing in that uncomfortable between state where nothing settles and nothing flows. This is the hardest time of year, the darkest season of the soul. This is when hope grows thin and the light seems too distant to ever return. This is November, and he is both guardian and prisoner of this threshold space. November himself is difficult to perceive directly. He is wrapped in gray and black, his face hidden deep within a hood, his form thin and insubstantial, as if he exists only partially in this reality. Where he walks, frost forms on the ground, not from cold, but from absence, the absence of warmth, of light, of easy comfort.
He is not cruel, but he is merciless in the way that truth is merciless, uncompromising in the way that thresholds are uncompromising. When he speaks, his voice seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, from inside Father Time's own mind and from the gray sky simultaneously. Father Time, November says, and even saying the name seems to cost him effort, as if words themselves are difficult in this place of transition. You have journeyed far, you have learned much. You stand now at the final threshold before winter's depths, before the ultimate letting go. But there is one more trial, one more passage, one more thing you must face before you can truly release your hold on what has been. He gestures ahead, and Father Time sees that the barren landscape slopes downward, descending into a valley so deep and so dark that its bottom cannot be seen. Mist rises from it, and in that mist, Father Time can see shapes moving, hear voices calling, not clearly enough to understand, but clearly enough to recognize that they are voices of loss, of things forgotten, of moments that have slipped through the cracks of memory and history. The Valley of Lost Time, November says. Every moment that was lived but not remembered. Every person who existed but left no mark, every word spoken into silence, every action taken that changed nothing, every life that began and ended without anyone noticing or caring. They gather here, in the threshold space between remembered existence and utter oblivion, and you must walk through them. Father Time stares into the valley, and he feels a dread deeper than anything he has yet experienced on this journey. This is different from February's grief or October's death. This is the fear of ultimate meaninglessness, the terror perhaps that existence itself is arbitrary, that nothing truly matters, that all his careful weaving of time's threads has been for nothing because most threads are eventually cut and forgotten anyway. I cannot, he whispers. If I walk through there, if I immerse myself in all that forgotten loss, I will lose myself. I will be overwhelmed by the sheer weight of meaninglessness. Perhaps, November says, his hidden face impossible to read. Or perhaps you will learn the final lesson about letting go, that even things which are forgotten once mattered, that mattering does not require eternal remembrance, that existence has value even if it leaves no permanent mark. You cannot truly let go until you understand that not everything you release will be remembered, and that this is acceptable, even necessary. February, who has been silent for some time, speaks now. Her voice is soft but steady. I will walk with you through the valley, she says. I am familiar with endings, with things that pass away, with the grief of what is lost. You do not have to face this darkness alone. Father Time looks at her, this small hooded figure who has guided him since January's mirrors, who has taught him to weep and to trust, and he feels grateful beyond words. Thank you, he says simply. Together, they begin their descent into the Valley of Lost Time. The mist rises to meet them as they walk downward, and almost immediately Father Time begins to hear the voices more clearly. They speak in fragments, in incomplete thoughts, in the broken syntax of memory disintegrating. I lived for 73 years, and no one remembers my name. I loved someone, another whispers, loved them with everything I had. But they died, and I died, and now no one knows we ever existed. I built a house, a third voice calls from the mist. Built it with my own hands, stone by stone. It stood for 100 years. Then it fell, and now there is no trace it was ever there. The voices multiply as Father Time walks deeper into the valley. Thousands of them, then millions, the numbers beyond counting. Every forgotten moment, every person whose name was lost, every action that led to nothing lasting,
every word that dissolved into silence. The sheer volume of loss is staggering, overwhelming, crushing in its enormity. Father Time sees shapes in the mist now, shadows of people who once lived, going through the motions of lives that no longer matter to anyone. A woman sweeping a floor that no longer exists, a man planting seeds that never grew, a child laughing at a joke no one remembers. They are not ghosts exactly, they are echoes, impressions, the faint traces of existence slowly dissolving into complete absence. "This is unbearable," Father Time says, his voice breaking. "All this loss, all this forgetting. What was the point of any of it if this is where it ends? What is the point of my work, of weaving time's threads, if so many threads simply unravel into nothing?" November's voice comes from the mist itself. Does a flower cease to have been beautiful because no one remembers seeing it bloom? Does a meal cease to have provided nourishment because no one recalls its taste? Does a kindness cease to have mattered because history did not record it? You measure meaning by permanence, Father Time, but permanence is not the same as meaning. Temporary existence is still existence. Brief mattering still matters. A figure emerges from the mist, an old woman, her form faint and fading. She looks at Father Time with eyes that are kind despite their sadness. "I was a teacher," she says. "I taught children to read. Most of them forgot me within a year of leaving my classroom. None of them remember me now. They are all dead themselves, and their children never knew my name. I have been forgotten completely, erased from history as if I never existed. And yet," she pauses, and something like a smile crosses her fading face, "and yet I taught them to read. The lessons I gave mattered in the moment I gave them. The children learned, even if they forgot their teacher. The ripples I created moved outward, even if no one can trace them back to their source. I mattered, even though I am forgotten." She begins to fade completely, dissolving into the mist, but her final words linger. "Mattering does not require remembering. Existence has value even when it leaves no permanent mark. Let go, Father Time. Let go of the need for everything to be preserved. Some things are meant to bloom and die and nourish the soil with their decay. This is not tragedy. This is the cycle." Father Time watches her disappear, and he feels something fundamental shifting in his understanding. He has been thinking of his work as preservation, keeping moments alive, holding them in the tapestry of time so they will never be lost. But perhaps his work has never been about preservation at all. Perhaps it has always been about witnessing, about allowing each moment its proper existence, whether or not that existence continues forever.
More figures approach from the mist. A soldier who died in a battle no one recorded. A poet whose verses were never written down. A healer who saved lives but whose name was lost. A builder whose structures crumbled. A lover whose passion was never documented. One by one they tell their stories of being forgotten, and one by one they affirm that their existence mattered anyway, that forgetting does not erase the value of having existed. We do not need to be remembered to have been real, they say in chorus, their voices blending into a single affirmation. We do not need to be preserved to have mattered. We existed, we lived, we loved, we worked, we laughed, we wept, and all of that had value in its moment, whether or not the moment was recorded for eternity. Let go, Father Time. Let go of the burden of keeping everything. Some things are meant to be forgotten, and that is not failure. That is nature. Father Time walks through the valley, and with each step he releases a little more of his desperate need to preserve everything. He begins to understand that his fear of letting go has been rooted in a false belief that if something is forgotten, it never mattered. But the valley teaches him otherwise. Things can matter deeply in their moment and then fade, and both the mattering and the fading are natural and acceptable. He thinks of all the moments he has woven into time's tapestry, the billions upon billions of instances of existence, most of which will never be specifically remembered by anyone. A butterfly landing on a flower in a forest where no one watches, a wave breaking on a shore with no witness, a star exploding in the darkness where no eye will ever see its light. They all happened, they all mattered in their happening, and they do not need to be forever preserved to have been worthwhile. The valley begins to slope upward again. They are climbing out, moving toward the far side, approaching the final threshold. The voices of the forgotten grow quieter, fading back into the mist, at peace with their own dissolution. They have taught what they came to teach. November waits at the valley's edge, his thin form a shadow against the gray sky. When Father Time reaches him, the hooded figure nods slowly. You have passed through the hardest darkness. You have faced the fear of ultimate meaninglessness and discovered that meaning does not require permanence. You have learned that letting go of specific memories, allowing certain moments to fade into obscurity, is not betrayal, but acceptance of the natural cycle. You are ready now for the final month, for December's depth, for the last lesson before midnight's transformation. He reaches out one thin hand, and in his palm rests something that looks like solidified shadow, dark, translucent, cool to the touch but not cold. The 11th essence, November says, the veil of release. It contains the wisdom that not everything you let go will be remembered, and this is acceptable. That mattering does not require eternal preservation, that even forgotten existence once had value. Carry this with you into winter's depths and trust that what you release into forgetting still mattered in its moment, still contributed to the great turning, still had meaning even if no record remains.
The shadow essence dissolves into Father Time's palm, joining the other 10. And as it does, he feels the final chains of his resistance breaking. He has learned to grieve, to laugh, to accept death, to choose what to remember. And now he has learned that some things can and should be forgotten, that not everything needs to be preserved, that the cycle includes both remembering and forgetting, both holding and releasing, both mattering and fading. I am ready, he says to November, and this time there is no hesitation in his voice. I am ready for December. I am ready for the end. November nods and points ahead, where the gray landscape gradually transitions to something even darker, even colder. She waits for you, he says, the Frost Queen. She has been holding the new year in suspension, afraid of her own obsolescence, fearing that when the year turns, she will become nothing. You must help her let go, as you have learned to let go. And in doing so, you will gather the final essence and complete your transformation. Go now. 1 hour remains until midnight. The end approaches. Father Time and February walk forward, leaving November at his threshold, leaving the valley of lost time behind them.
They move into the final realm, into December's crystalline palace, into the depths of winter, where the ultimate letting go awaits. The transition into December's realm is absolute and unmistakable. The gray of November gives way to white, not the white of fresh snow and sunlight, but the white of ice in moonlight, the white of frozen lakes and crystalline structures, the white that contains within it every color but shows none of them. December's palace appears gradually, emerging from the whiteness like a structure revealing itself through clearing fog. It is enormous, built entirely of ice, but this is not ordinary ice that melts or cracks. This is the ice of eternity, the frozen form of time itself, solid and permanent and beautiful beyond description. The walls are translucent, showing layers upon layers of frozen moments within them. The towers reach toward a sky that is both black with night and white with stars. Every surface gleams with internal light, as if the palace has captured the aurora borealis and frozen it within its structure. The palace is beautiful, breathtakingly so, but it is also profoundly cold. Not just physically cold, though the temperature has dropped to levels that would kill any mortal instantly. It is emotionally cold, spiritually cold, the cold of perfect preservation that prevents all growth, all change, all life. This is winter at its deepest, darkness at its most complete, the moment when the year is furthest from the sun and closest to eternal night. December herself stands at the center of her palace's great hall, and she is magnificent and terrible. She wears a crown of ice that would blind anyone who looked at it directly in full sunlight, though here in the depths of winter night it glows with a softer, more terrible light. Her gown is woven from snow that never melts and frost that never thaws, and it trails behind her like a river of frozen time. Her skin is pale as winter moonlight, her eyes the color of frozen lakes, blue so deep it is almost black, holding within them the accumulated cold of all winters since the first frost formed. She is beautiful in the way that winter is beautiful, sharp and clear and utterly merciless. But her beauty is troubled. As Father Time and February approach, they can see that despite her regal bearing, despite her terrible magnificence, December's face shows signs of distress. Her hands tremble slightly. Her eyes, though cold, hold something that might be fear. Behind her, suspended in a column of ice so clear it is almost invisible, floats the new year, baby Aeon, still flickering between forms, still trapped in the moment before birth, unable to fully manifest, while December holds time frozen in this instant before transition.
"Father Time," December says, and her voice is like wind over frozen lakes, beautiful and cold and utterly clear. "You have come at last. I knew you would. I knew that eventually you would complete your journey and arrive here, at my palace, at winter's heart, carrying your 11 essences and demanding the 12th so you can complete your transformation and allow the year to turn." She gestures around at her palace, at the frozen beauty of her realm. "Look at what I have created here. Look at this perfection. Nothing changes here, Father Time. Nothing decays. Nothing is lost. I have frozen this moment, this end of the year, this threshold before transition, and in freezing it, I have made it eternal. Is this not what you wanted? Is this not what you spent eternity trying to do? Preserve moments, prevent change, keep what is precious from slipping away." Father Time looks around at the palace, at the frozen moments visible within the walls, at the terrible beauty of perpetual winter, and he recognizes it for what it is, his own fear made manifest, his resistance to change transformed into architecture,
his desperate need to hold on, given form and substance. "It is beautiful," he says honestly, "and it is also a prison. For you, for the new year, for time itself. You have frozen the moment, yes, but in doing so you have also frozen yourself. You cannot move forward because you are terrified of what comes after." December's composure cracks slightly. "Of course I am terrified," she says, and now her voice carries an edge of desperation. "I am the end of the year. I am darkness and cold and the death of all growing things. If the year turns, if time moves forward into January's new beginning, then what becomes of me? I become memory of cold and darkness, nothing more. I am forgotten until next winter, and even then I am not truly myself again. I am just another December, another ending, another moment of darkness before the return of light. I become obsolete, irrelevant, nothing."
She moves closer to the column of ice where the new year waits in suspension. "So I have kept him here, kept him frozen, kept him from being born. If he never emerges, if the year never turns, then I never have to face my own ending. I can remain December forever, frozen in my moment, eternal in my perfection." Father Time understands. He sees in December his own fear reflected, the fear that letting go means becoming nothing, that transformation equals erasure, that what comes after will make what came before irrelevant. She is holding the new year prisoner, not from cruelty, but from terror, the same terror he has been learning to release throughout this long night's journey. "December," he says gently, and he approaches her without fear, despite the cold that radiates from her form. "You are afraid of the same thing I was afraid of, that ending means erasure, that letting go means ceasing to matter. But I have learned something on my journey through the months. I have learned that nothing truly disappears, everything transforms." He holds up his hand, showing the 11 essences glowing in his palm. Look, February's grief, March's integration, April's chaos, May's seed, June's unity, July's descent, August's cutting, September's choice, October's death, November's forgetting. Each lesson has taught me that letting go is not loss, but transformation. And you, December, you are not the ending. You are the depth from which new beginnings emerge. You are the darkness that makes the return of light meaningful. You are the rest that makes new growth possible. December shakes her head, her ice crown glittering. "But I will be forgotten. The year turns, spring returns, and everyone forgets the depths of winter. Everyone forgets the cold and the darkness and the necessary rest. They remember summer's warmth, but not winter's peace. They celebrate spring's renewal, but not winter's preparation. I become nothing but an obstacle to be endured, rather than a necessary part of the cycle." February steps forward then, pulling back her hood for the first time in this entire journey. Her face is revealed, young and old simultaneously, carrying both the freshness of late winter and the weight of accumulated cold. "Sister," February says, addressing December directly, "I too am a month of cold and darkness. I too am often forgotten, overlooked, rushed through. But I have learned something you have not yet accepted. We do not need to be loved to be necessary. We do not need to be celebrated to be essential. Winter is the foundation upon which spring is built. Rest is the source of all action. Darkness is the canvas upon which light paints its colors. We matter even when we are not appreciated. We matter even when we are forgotten."
Saturn materializes then, the ancient timekeeper who came before Father Time, appearing in December's frozen palace with the ease of one who has long since transcended the limitations of frozen moments. He moves to December and places a weathered hand on her shoulder, and where he touches her, the ice begins, just slightly, to warm. December, Saturn says, his voice carrying the authority of one who has already made this journey and emerged transformed on the other side. I watched you being born millennia ago, when the first year divided itself into months and you became the guardian of its deepest moment. You have always been afraid. From your very first existence, you have feared that your darkness makes you unworthy, that your cold makes you unwanted, that your role as ending makes you the villain rather than the hero. He smiles, and it is a smile of infinite kindness. But you are not the villain. You are the hero of rest, the champion of necessary darkness, the guardian of the depth from which all renewal emerges. Without you, spring would have no tension, no anticipation, no meaning. The return of light matters because you hold the darkness. New growth is celebrated because you provide the rest. You are essential, December, not despite your darkness, but because of it. December's eyes fill with tears, the first water to emerge from ice in her realm in longer than anyone can remember. I am so cold, she whispers, so dark, so far from the warmth and the light. How can I matter when I represent everything people fear and endure, rather than love and celebrate? Father Time steps closer and takes her frozen hand in his. The cold burns, but he does not pull away. Because, he says, because depth matters as much as height, because rest matters as much as action, because endings matter as much as beginnings, because you, December, hold the space where the old year can truly, finally let go, and where the new year can gather its strength before being born. You are not the end of the story, December. You are the pause between chapters, the breath between verses, the silence that makes music meaningful. He gestures to the column of ice holding the new year. Release him, not because he will replace you, but because he will continue what you have begun. Not because you must disappear, but because you must transform, as I must transform, as all things must transform to participate in the great turning of time. Release him, and in releasing him, claim your own freedom, freedom from fear, from holding so tightly to your moment that it becomes prison rather than palace. December looks at the trapped new year, at this being she has held suspended out of her own terror. She sees in him not her replacement, but her continuation, not her erasure, but her evolution. The tears that have been forming in her eyes finally fall, and where they land on the frozen floor, flowers begin. Impossible flowers, winter flowers, blooms that should not exist in such cold but do anyway, because December's tears contain within them not just sorrow, but also release, not just grief, but hope. I am afraid, she admits, her voice breaking. I am so terribly afraid of becoming nothing. I know, Father Time says, so am I. But we do not have to stop being afraid. We only have to stop letting fear make all our choices. We can be afraid and brave simultaneously. We can tremble and still act. We can fear the unknown and still step forward into it. That is what courage is, not the absence of fear, but the choice to continue despite it. December stands silent for a long moment, and in that silence, everything hangs in balance. The cosmic clock stands at mere minutes before midnight. The new year waits in his column of ice. The palace around them trembles with the tension of a moment stretched too long, pulled too tight, held too desperately.
Then, slowly, December raises her hands. Her ice crown glows brighter, and power gathers around her. The power of winter's depth, of cold's clarity, of ending's finality. She speaks a single word in a language older than language, and the column of ice holding the new year begins to crack. Fissures spread across its surface like lightning frozen in crystal, like rivers of possibility cutting through certainty. Light leaks through the cracks, golden light, the light of dawn, the light of new beginnings long delayed. The new year, still flickering between forms, begins to solidify, to stabilize, to prepare for the birth that has been waiting all this long night. December's hands shake as she maintains the unfreezing, as she deliberately releases her grip on the frozen moment, as she chooses, despite her terror, to let go. "I am still afraid," she says through gritted teeth as power flows through her. "I am still terrified that this means I become nothing, but I am choosing to trust. I am choosing to believe that transformation is possible, that endings lead to beginnings, that my darkness has purpose, even if that purpose is not always celebrated. I am choosing to release my hold." The column shatters completely, not with violence, but with a sound like 1,000 bells ringing in harmony, like ice becoming water, becoming light. The new year stumbles forward, free at last, gasping his first true breath, and as he does, the entire palace begins to transform. The ice walls remain, but they grow warmer, no longer frozen solid preservation, but living ice, flowing ice, ice that moves and changes while still maintaining its essential nature. The cold remains, but it becomes bearable, purposeful, the necessary cold of winter, rather than the eternal cold of frozen time. Light begins to filter through from somewhere, not banishing the darkness but existing alongside it, proving that even in winter's depth, light persists. December falls to her knees, exhausted from the effort of releasing what she has held for so long. Father Time catches her, supports her, and together they watch as the new year takes his first uncertain steps, his form finally settling into something stable, a child, young and bright and full of potential, carrying within him all the moments yet to be experienced, all the possibilities yet to unfold. Saturn smiles and nods to them both. "Well done," he says quietly, "both of you. You have learned what every ending must learn, that releasing is not defeat but victory, that letting go is not weakness but strength, that transformation requires first the courage to stop being what you were." December looks up at Father Time with eyes that are no longer frozen lakes, but living water, still cold, still deep, but flowing now rather than static. "We have both learned to let go," she says. "You have gathered your 11 essences, and I have released my prisoner. Together we can create the final essence, the one that comes not from a single lesson, but from the accumulated wisdom of all 12 months, the understanding that letting go and transformation are not separate acts, but one continuous ceremony. She rises to her feet with Father Time's help, and she reaches out to touch his hand, the hand that holds the 11 glowing essences. Where her cold fingers touch his weathered palm, frost spreads, not to freeze, but to crystallize, to clarify, to bring into sharp focus everything he has learned. The 12th essence, December says, the frost of completion. It contains the final wisdom that endings and beginnings are not enemies but partners, that December and January are married in the same way June taught you all opposites are married, that you and I must both let go not sequentially but simultaneously, supporting each other in our mutual transformation. The frost becomes solid, becomes real, becomes a small, perfect snowflake that hovers in Father Time's palm, unique and temporary and utterly beautiful. As it settles among the other 11 essences, they begin to glow more brightly, and Father Time feels them merging, combining, becoming something greater than their individual parts. Thank you, December, for your fear as much as for your courage, for showing me that even at this final moment, even with all I have learned, fear remains, and that this is acceptable. We do not overcome fear, we learn to carry it with grace.
December nods, and already she is beginning to fade slightly, to become less solid, as if releasing the new year has also begun her own transformation from present into memory. Go now, she says. Return to the celestial observatory. The 12 essences are complete. The clock approaches midnight. It is time for the final transformation. Time for you to become what you must be. Time for the year to turn at last. A doorway appears in the ice wall, not a doorway February opens or Janus reveals, but one that simply exists because the time for doors has come. Through it, Father Time can see the celestial observatory where his journey began, where his loom still weaves, where the fates and the months and Saturn and the new year all gather for the final ceremony. Father Time looks at December one last time, this frost queen who held time frozen out of fear, who learned to let go at the exact moment he learned the same lesson, who will become memory of cold and darkness and necessary rest, just as he will become memory of this particular year's turning. I will not forget you, he says, even when I am memory rather than present, even when winter passes and spring returns, I will carry within me the knowledge of your depth, your darkness, your essential role in the cycle. You matter, December. You have always mattered. December smiles, and it is a sad smile, but also a peaceful one. And I will not forget you, Father Time. We will be memories together, you of this year, me of this winter, and in being memories, we will become the foundation upon which future years and future winters are built. We transform together. We let go together. We complete the cycle together. Father Time and February walk toward the doorway, toward the observatory, toward midnight's final transformation. Behind them, December's palace continues its own transformation, from frozen preservation into flowing winter, from prison into proper season, from desperate holding into peaceful releasing.
The new year follows them through the doorway, no longer trapped, no longer suspended, ready now to be born when the clock strikes its final chime. 1 minute remains until midnight. The journey through the 12 months is complete. The 12 essences burn in Father Time's palm like captured stars, like condensed wisdom, like the accumulated understanding of an entire year's turning. Now comes the final transformation, the ultimate letting go, the moment when fear and courage, grief and joy, holding and releasing all come together in the single act of allowing what was to become what will be.
The doorway from December's transforming palace leads not through space, but through understanding. Father Time, February, and the newly freed New Year step through it, and they find themselves once again in the celestial observatory where this long night's journey began. But the observatory has changed, or perhaps Father Time has changed and sees it differently now. The vast chamber still stretches beyond sight, its ceiling still lost in star-filled darkness, its floor still a mosaic of countless clock faces. The hourglasses still line the walls, sand falling in steady streams. The cosmic loom still stands at the center, its threads still weaving themselves according to patterns set so deeply they continue even without guidance. But where before the observatory felt heavy with the weight of ages, oppressive with the burden of eternal responsibility, now it feels peaceful. The ticking of infinite clocks creates not anxiety, but rhythm, not pressure, but music. The falling sand in the hourglasses is not time running out, but time flowing naturally, as it should, as it must. The 12 months have gathered again, forming their circle around the loom just as they did at the beginning of the night. But they too seem different, or perhaps Father Time simply sees them more clearly now. January, with his 2 faces, stands at the threshold, guardian of beginnings. February, who has walked the entire journey with Father Time, takes her place beside him. March stands ready, warrior at rest. April dances with contained chaos. May blooms with patient potential. June glows with unified opposites. July shines with remembered peaks. August holds his harvest tools with satisfaction. September carries his book of chosen memories. October embodies beautiful dying. November guards his threshold of darkness, and December, still fading slightly but present, represents the depth from which all renewal emerges. The Fates are here as well. Clothos with her distaff, Lachesis with her measuring rod, Atropos with her shears. They stand together, waiting, their ancient faces showing something that might be approval, or might simply be acknowledgement that what must happen is finally happening. Saturn sits in a chair that wasn't there before, or perhaps was always there but only becomes visible when needed. He watches with the patient eyes of one who has lived this moment himself, who knows both its terror and its necessity, who can offer nothing more than quiet presence while the final transformation unfolds. Janus stands at the boundary between past and future, both faces watching, both aspects present, embodying the threshold that Father Time must now cross. And at the center of it all, beside the cosmic loom, stands baby New Year, Aeon, no longer flickering, no longer trapped, but solid now, real, ready to take up the burden and the gift that Father Time must release. The cosmic clock hangs suspended above them all, its hands trembling as they approach midnight. Less than a minute remains now, perhaps only seconds. The entire universe seems to hold its breath,
waiting for the final moment, the ultimate transformation, the turning of the year. Father Time walks to the center of the circle, to his loom, to the place where he has woven time's threads for longer than memory can follow. In his palm, the 12 essences burn with combined light: crystal and teardrop, blade and raindrop, seed and ring, sunstone and wheat, book and shadow, veil and frost, all of them merged into something greater than their individual parts, all of them pulsing in rhythm with his ancient heartbeat. He looks around at the assembled powers, at these beings who have witnessed his journey, who have taught him, who have challenged him, who have ultimately helped him learn what he needed to know. His voice, when he speaks, is steady despite the momentousness of what approaches. I have walked through the year. I have visited each month, learned each lesson, gathered each essence. I have wept with February and fought with March. I have laughed with April and planted with May. I have married opposites with June and descended from peaks with July. I have harvested with August and chosen with September. I have faced death with October and walked through forgetting with November. And I have released frozen time with December, learning that we all must let go together, supporting each other in our mutual transformation. He holds up his palm, showing the merged essences glowing like a small captured sun. I carry the wisdom of letting go. I understand now that transformation is not loss, but continuation in a different form. I know that endings and beginnings are one ceremony, that death and birth happen in the same breath, that the year does not end so much as it transforms, taking me with it from present into memory. He pauses, and in that pause, the weight of eternity presses upon him one final time. This is the moment. This is when theory becomes practice, when understanding becomes action, when all the lessons learned must be embodied in a single choice to release what he has held for so long. I am still afraid, he admits, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. After everything I have learned, after every essence gathered, after walking through the valley of forgetting and the palace of frost, I am still afraid. The fear has not disappeared. I am about to cease being what I have always been, and that terrifies me in ways I still do not fully understand. February steps forward and takes his free hand. Fear is not your enemy, she reminds him. Fear is your companion. It walks with you into transformation, and that is acceptable. You do not have to be fearless, you only have to be brave. Saturn rises from his chair and places his hand on Father Time's shoulder. I was afraid too. At this exact moment, standing where you now stand, I was terrified beyond measure. The fear does not make you weak, it makes you honest. You are doing something that should be frightening. You are dying and being reborn simultaneously. Honor the fear, but do not let it stop you. The new year approaches, this child becoming God, this potential becoming present. He looks up at Father Time with eyes that hold both innocence and ancient wisdom, both uncertainty and profound trust. I am not here to replace you, the new year says, his young voice clear and steady. Everything you have been will become the foundation of everything I will be. You are not ending, you are transforming, and I promise to honor what you give me, to carry it forward with reverence and care, to prove that your letting go was not sacrifice, but gift. Father Time looks into the child's eyes and sees truth there, sees continuity, sees the promise that his work will matter even after he stops being the one who does it. Something in his heart loosens, not fully, not completely, but enough. Thank you, he says to the new year. Thank you to all of you. for this journey, for these lessons, for your patience with my fear and your insistence on my transformation. I am ready now. Let us complete what we have begun. Let us mix the elixir of transformation and allow the year to turn at last. The fates step forward together. Atropos raises her shears, and for a moment Father Time tenses, ancient instinct reading the gesture as threat. But the shears do not cut him. Instead, they cut the air itself, opening a space between moments where something new can be created. Clothos raises her distaff, and new thread begins to form, thread that is neither past nor future, but the liminal space between, thread that is transformation itself made tangible. Lachesis raises her measuring rod, and she measures not length, but depth, not duration, but meaning, calibrating the exact proportions needed for what comes next. The 12 essences must be combined, Clothos says, her ancient voice carrying the weight of every beginning she has spun into existence. They must be mixed in the proper proportions, Lachesis adds, her voice precise and careful, the voice of one who has measured every life's length since the first moment sparked. And they must be consumed before midnight's final stroke, Atropos concludes, her voice carrying the finality of every ending she has cut into place.
Father Time looks down at his cracked hourglass, the symbol of his office, the tool he has carried throughout this journey. The crack that appeared so long ago has grown larger, the glass nearly ready to shatter entirely. He holds it up, and the 12 essences in his other palm seem to recognize it, to be drawn toward it. In here? He asks. I mix them in here. It is the vessel that has held your time, January says, his two faces speaking in harmony. It is the container that has measured your existence. It is fitting that it should become the cup from which you drink your transformation. Father Time tips his palm, and the 12 essences flow like liquid light from his hand into the cracked hourglass. As they pour, they begin to mix, to swirl, to combine into something new. The crystal of reflection merges with the teardrop of remembrance. The blade of severance cuts through the raindrop of spontaneity, creating perfect portions. The seed of potential sprouts in the ring of unity. The sunstone of culmination warms the wheat of winnowing. The book of wisdom opens its pages to the shadow of acceptance. The veil of release shrouds the frost of completion. They blend and flow, merge and separate and merge again, creating patterns of breathtaking complexity, forming swirls of every color and no color, becoming the elixir of transformation, the distilled wisdom of an entire year's turning, the accumulated understanding of 12 months' lessons, the essence of letting go made drinkable. The hourglass, which seemed ready to shatter, suddenly repairs itself. The crack seals, not disappearing but becoming part of the glass's structure, a scar that adds strength rather than weakness. And within the restored hourglass, the elixir swirls, ready to be consumed. Father Time holds the hourglass carefully. The cosmic clock's hands tremble, frozen at 1 second before midnight, waiting for this final act before they can complete their turn. Before I drink, Father Time says, I must speak what I have learned. The fates require it, the moment demands it, and perhaps I need to hear myself say it, to prove to myself that I truly understand. He takes a breath, and when he speaks, his voice carries the accumulated wisdom of his long journey through the night.
From January, Father Time begins. his voice steady and clear. I learned that every moment I release will not vanish, but transform, becoming part of the eternal foundation upon which future moments are built. That letting go does not mean forgetting, but allowing what was to become the ground for what will be. That beginnings require acknowledging endings, and endings create space for beginnings. That I stand always at a threshold, looking both ways, honoring what stands behind while stepping into what lies ahead. January nods, both faces showing approval, and his presence in the circle glows brighter for a moment. From February, Father Time continues, turning to face the small hooded figure who has been his companion throughout this journey. I learned that grief is not weakness, but the price of having loved. That tears are not destructive, but transformative, melting the ice of frozen grief into water that nourishes new growth. That sorrow, when allowed to flow rather than being held in rigid preservation, becomes the fertile ground from which unexpected beauty can emerge. That honoring loss does not require imprisoning it, but rather releasing it with respect and gratitude. February pulls back her hood fully now, and her face, revealed at last in the observatory's light, shows both tears and a radiant smile. She has completed her purpose, has guided Father Time through his transformation, and now she too can rest until her time comes round again. From March, Father Time says, I learned that my resistance to change is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a part of myself to be acknowledged and integrated. That the shadow self holds truths I have been avoiding, and fighting it only strengthens its hold. That true courage is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite fear, to embrace what I have tried to deny, to become whole by accepting all parts of myself, even the parts that frighten me. March raises his sword in salute, and the gesture is both warrior's respect and recognition of a battle fought and won, not against an external enemy, but against the divided self. From April, Father Time continues, and despite the solemnity of the moment, a small smile touches his ancient face. I learned that not all change can be controlled, and that this is not failure, but the very nature of life. That chaos is not the enemy of order, but its dancing partner. That spontaneity opens doors that planning cannot find, and that sometimes the most important thing I can do is stop trying to organize everything and simply allow myself to be carried by the flow of existence. That laughter is not frivolous but profound, and joy is not something to be postponed, but something to be experienced even in the middle of transformation. April, who has been barely containing her exuberance, spins in a circle, her dress of rain and rainbows shimmering, and her laughter fills the observatory like music, like permission to feel joy even in serious moments. From May, Father Time says, his voice growing softer, more contemplative, I learned that legacy is not about witnessing outcomes, but nurturing possibilities. That I can plant seeds in soil I will never walk upon, can participate in futures I will never see, and that this participation has meaning even without my presence to validate it. That having faith in the continuing story is more important than needing to know my specific role in every chapter. That the act of planting matters as much as, perhaps more than, the eventual harvest. May smiles, her crown of flowers blooming more vibrantly, and somewhere in a garden that exists beyond this moment, a seed Father Time planted stirs in dark soil, preparing to grow.
From June, Father Time says, I learned that wholeness requires accepting paradox, that opposites are not enemies, but partners in the dance of complete existence, that joy and sorrow, birth and death, beginning and ending are married to each other, bound in unity that makes both more meaningful than either could be alone, that my transformation is not a journey from here to there, but a union of what I was with what I will be, a ceremony that creates something new while honoring both partners, that endings and beginnings are not separate events, but one continuous marriage. June's presence radiates warmth and benediction, and all around the observatory, things that seemed opposed begin to harmonize. The tick and the talk, the in-breath and the out-breath, the light and the shadow, all recognized as partners rather than adversaries.
From July, Father Time says, I learned that even perfection must pass, that clinging to the peak denies the valley its purpose, and that descent is not defeat, but the natural continuation of the journey. That remaining at the summit would not preserve the moment's beauty, but would trap it, would transform paradise into prison. That every culmination exists not as a permanent destination, but as a waypoint in an eternal cycle of climbing, reaching, descending, and climbing again. That letting go of perfection is not settling for less, but honoring the complete pattern. July's presence, which has been shining with brilliant intensity, softens slightly, becomes warmer rather than just brighter, and Father Time understands that even the peak of summer has learned something from this night, that its glory is enhanced rather than diminished by knowing it must pass. From August, Father Time says, his hand instinctively touching his scythe, which has been transformed throughout this journey from a dull tool of reluctant endings into a sharp instrument of necessary liberation. I learned that cutting away is not violence, but kindness, that separation is not harm, but the allowing of transformation from one form of existence to another, that my scythe is not a weapon of death, but a tool of liberation, severing what must be separated so that new forms can emerge, cutting connections not from cruelty, but from love, releasing grain from root so bread can be made, so life can be nourished in new ways. August nods with the satisfaction of one who has taught a lesson that will change everything, and his fields, existing somewhere beyond this moment, rustle with grain that knows when to fall, that understands the mercy of being harvested. From September, Father Time says, I learned the hardest lesson of all, that I cannot and should not preserve everything, that memory is not about perfect preservation, but about choosing what to keep close and what to hold lightly, what to examine frequently and what to trust to general impression, that trying to save everything equally is the same as saving nothing meaningfully, that curating my memories with wisdom is not betrayal of what happened, but the only way to carry forward what truly matters, that imperfect choosing is better than paralyzed clutching. September's library, vast and infinite and impossible, seems to settle somehow, as if even it recognizes that infinity becomes manageable when one accepts that not every book needs to be read, not every story needs to be remembered with equal detail, that some knowledge can be trusted to exist without being constantly consulted. From October, Father Time says, and his voice drops to nearly a whisper, I learned that death is not erasure, but rest, not annihilation, but transformation into something more permanent than the present could ever be, that endings, when they come in their proper time, are not tragedies, but completions, not failures, but natural conclusions to stories well lived, that I can face my own mortality without flinching, not because I am no longer afraid, but because I understand that what I fear is not the horror I imagined, but a kind of mercy, a gentle transformation into peace. October's presence, already liminal and twilight-touched, seems to grow simultaneously more solid and more translucent, embodying the paradox of being both present and departing, both here and moving towards somewhere else. From November, Father Time says, and his voice drops to nearly a whisper, I learned that not everything I release will be remembered, and this is not just acceptable, but necessary. That mattering does not require eternal preservation, that existence has value even when it leaves no lasting record, that the moments which fade into complete forgetting still mattered in their happening, that the burden of trying to preserve everything would crush me, would crush existence itself, that some things are meant to bloom and die and nourish the soil with their decay, and this is not tragedy, but the natural cycle of all things. November's shadowy presence seems almost to disappear entirely for a moment, as if demonstrating his own lesson, that even the guardians of thresholds must sometimes fade into the mist, must allow themselves to be nearly forgotten so that others can cross the boundaries they guard. And from December, Father Time says, turning to face the Frost Queen who stands at the far edge of the circle, already more memory than present, already transforming as he speaks, I have learned that we do not overcome fear by eliminating it, but by choosing to act despite it. That even at the final moment, even with all wisdom gathered, fear remains, and this is not weakness, but honesty. That endings and beginnings must support each other in their mutual transformation, that I am not alone in my letting go, that we all release together, die together, transform together, that darkness has purpose, that cold has meaning, that winter's depth is not obstacle, but foundation, not enemy, but essential partner in the cycle of renewal. December, hearing her lesson honored, hearing her darkness recognized as necessary rather than merely endured, smiles, a smile of such profound relief and peace that transforms her entire presence. She has spent eternity fearing that her cold made her unworthy, that her darkness made her unneeded. But Father Time's words affirm what she has learned this night, that she matters precisely because of what she is, not in spite of it. The 12 months glow brighter as their lessons are spoken aloud, as their wisdom is acknowledged and claimed. The essences in the hourglass swirl faster, respond to the speaking, become more potent with each truth articulated. Father Time raises the hourglass containing the Elixir of Transformation, and he looks around the circle one final time, at February who guided him, at the months who taught him, at the fates who measured him, at Saturn who walked this path before him, at Janus who holds all thresholds, at the new year who waits to continue what he must release. I have learned what I needed to know, he says. I understand now that letting go is not defeat but completion, not ending but transformation into a different kind of existence. I am ready to drink, to transform, to become memory rather than present, to allow the year to turn at last. The cosmic clock's hands tremble, still frozen at 1 second before midnight, waiting for this final act. Father Time raises the hourglass to his lips.
The elixir of transformation touches Father Time's lips, and the moment it does, the entire universe seems to pause. Every clock in the observatory stops its ticking. Every hourglass freezes its falling sand midstream. Every breath in every realm of existence is held in anticipation of what comes next. The elixir tastes of everything and nothing, of beginnings and endings,
of joy and sorrow, of certainty and chaos, of peaks and valleys, of harvest and planting, of remembering and forgetting, of death and rest, of darkness and its acceptance. It tastes of the entire year distilled into liquid wisdom, and as Father Time drinks, he feels each lesson not just as concept, but as lived experience, not just as understanding, but as embodied truth. The crystal of reflection flows into him, and he sees himself clearly for the first time, not just what he has been, but what he is becoming, not just his fears, but his courage, not just his holding on, but his letting go. The teardrop of remembrance dissolves on his tongue, and he feels the weight of all grief he has witnessed, all sorrow he has carried, but he feels it transforming from burden into nourishment, from pain into the ground from which compassion grows. The blade of severance cuts through him, not painfully, but precisely, separating who he was from who he is becoming, cutting away the old identity, not to destroy it, but to free it, to allow it to transform into something new. The raindrop of spontaneity splashes through his consciousness, breaking apart the rigid structures of eternal control, teaching his very cells the wisdom of flexibility, of adaptation, of dancing with chaos rather than fighting against it. The seed of potential takes root somewhere deep in his being, and he feels it preparing to grow in soil he will never see, feels his legacy extending forward into futures he will not witness, feels peace in knowing that his work will continue whether or not he is there to validate it. The ring of unity merges everything within him that seemed separate, past and future, holding and releasing, fear and courage, grief and joy, binding them together in marriage that makes him whole in ways he has never been whole before. The sunstone of culmination warms him from within, reminding him that peaks exist to be descended from, that glory is most beautiful when it passes, that perfection's meaning comes precisely from its temporary nature. The wheat of winnowing teaches his body the rhythm of harvest, of cutting and gathering, of separating and bundling, of releasing specific forms so that new forms can emerge, of trusting that what seems like emptiness is actually fullness waiting to transform. The book of wisdom opens inside his mind, and he understands deeply, finally, completely, that he cannot hold everything, should not try to hold everything, that choosing what to remember and what to release is not failure, but the only way to carry forward what truly matters. The shadow of acceptance spreads through him like evening falling, and he stops fighting against his own ending, stops resisting the transformation that must come, embraces his own mortality, not with resignation, but with recognition that death is rest, that endings are completions, that this is natural and right and even merciful. The veil of release settles over everything, and he lets go, not of specific memories yet, not of individual moments, but of the desperate need to clutch them all, of the terror that releasing them means they never mattered, of the belief that preservation equals love, when sometimes love means allowing things to fade into forgetting. The frost of completion crystallizes everything he has learned into a single moment of perfect clarity. This is not just his transformation, but December's, not just his letting go, but hers, not just his ending,
but the ending required so that beginnings can happen. Not death, but the necessary pause between breaths that allows life to continue. As the last drops of the elixir slide down his throat, Father Time feels his body beginning to change. Not dramatically, not violently, but gently, inevitably, like ice melting into water, like water evaporating into air, like substance transforming into essence. His physical form, the weathered hands, the ancient face, the robes tattered by ages of wear, begins to shimmer, to become translucent, to take on the quality of memory rather than presence. He is still here, still visible, but he is becoming less solid, less anchored to the moment of now, beginning his transformation from present into past, from active into archived, from timekeeper into time kept. The cosmic clock's hands, frozen for so long at 1 second before midnight, suddenly release. They move that final increment, complete their long journey around the dial, and begin to toll. The first stroke of midnight rings out. Bong. The sound reverberates through every realm of existence, through every moment that has ever been and ever will be. It is not just a sound, but an announcement, a declaration, a transformation made audible. Father Time's transformation accelerates. His physical form continues to shimmer and fade, becoming more memory and less solid presence with each passing moment. Bong. The second stroke. The 12 months begin to glow with particular intensity, each one preparing for their own transition, not ending but cycling, moving from this year into the space beyond years, where they wait to be called forth again when their time comes around once more. Bong. The third stroke. Father Time looks down at his hands and sees them becoming silver mist, beautiful and insubstantial, no longer capable of weaving time's threads, but also no longer burdened by the necessity of doing so. Bong. The fourth stroke. The new year steps forward, moving closer to the loom, preparing to take his place, to begin his work, to weave the threads of the coming year according to patterns he will discover as he works. Bong. The fifth stroke. Father Time feels memories beginning to sort themselves, not disappearing, but organizing, some moving into sharp focus while others soften into general impression, the natural curation that September taught him, the wisdom of keeping essence while releasing overwhelming detail. Bong. The sixth stroke. The fates watch with ancient eyes that have seen this ceremony countless times, and yet there is something in their gaze that suggests even they find each transformation unique, each letting go singular in its courage and necessity. Bong. The seventh stroke. Father Time sees Saturn watching him, and their eyes meet, predecessor and successor, both having walked this path, both understanding what it costs and what it gives. Saturn nods once, a gesture of recognition, of respect, of welcome to the fellowship of those who have let go. Bong. The eighth stroke. December is nearly gone now, having completed her own transformation alongside Father Time's, having released her frozen grip and her imprisoned fear, having become memory of winter's depth, of necessary darkness, of rest from which renewal emerges. Bong. The ninth stroke. Father Time realizes that he is not afraid anymore. The fear has not disappeared. It is still there, still present, but it has been transformed by the same elixir that transforms him, turned from paralyzing terror into simply one more feeling among many, acknowledged but not dominant, present but not controlling. Bong, the 10th stroke.
The new year reaches out and touches the loom, and the threads respond to him, recognizing their new keeper, beginning to weave themselves according to his touch rather than the patterns Father Time set so long ago. It is a gentle transition, a passing of responsibility that happens not through force, but through natural succession. Bong, the 11th stroke. Father Time is almost entirely translucent now, more idea than form, more memory than presence. He can feel himself becoming part of the fabric of existence itself, no longer standing apart as timekeeper, but settling into the foundation as the time that was, the year that has passed, the moments that have been lived and are now being archived into the eternal record. He has one more moment before the final stroke, one more instant of being fully conscious as himself before the transformation completes. He uses it to look around the observatory one last time, to see the faces of those who have taught him, to witness the new year taking up the burden he is releasing, to acknowledge that everything he feared has come to pass, and yet he remains, changed, yes, transformed, certainly, but not erased, not destroyed, not made into nothing.
He smiles, and the cosmic clock strikes its final chime. Bong. The 12th stroke fades into silence, and in that silence, everything changes. Father Time completes his transformation. His physical form disperses entirely into silver mist that spreads throughout the observatory, settling into the walls, soaking into the floor, rising to join the star-filled ceiling. He is not gone. He is everywhere now, part of the structure itself, woven into the fabric of the eternal space where time is measured and witnessed. But he is also elsewhere. He finds himself in a place that is both new and familiar, the Hall of Memory, where all past years gather after their transformation. It is vast and peaceful, illuminated by soft amber light that comes from no visible source. Other years are here, countless of them, stretching back through time to the very first year that ever was. They welcome him without words, these past years, these memories of time's turnings, and he understands that this is his rest now, his peace, his new existence. He is no longer present, but past, no longer active, but archived, no longer weaving, but woven. And it is good. The burden has been lifted, the weight has been shared, the responsibility has been passed on to capable hands. He can still see the observatory, though he is no longer in it in the same way. He watches as Aeon, baby New Year, the child of potential, takes his first uncertain steps toward the loom. The new year is nervous, understandably so. He has never done this before. He does not know all the patterns, all the rhythms, all the subtle complexities of weaving time's threads. But the 12 months gather around him, each one ready to teach, to guide, to support him through his first moments of responsibility. February, who has returned to her place in the circle after guiding Father Time through his transformation, speaks first. "You do not have to be perfect," she says to the new year. You only have to be present. You only have to do the work with care and attention, learning as you go, trusting that you will make mistakes and that these mistakes are part of the pattern, not flaws in it. January adds his wisdom, both faces speaking. Remember that you stand at a threshold, always looking both ways. Honor what came before. Honor Father Time's work, the year he was, the moments he preserved. But also look forward, create what will be, weave new patterns, allow yourself to be different from your predecessor, while still building upon his foundation. The new year nods, taking in their words, and he reaches out to touch the first thread. His hands are small and uncertain, but they are also gentle, careful, respectful of the work they are undertaking. He begins to weave, and the threads respond, not perfectly, not with the practiced ease that Father Time demonstrated after eternities of experience, but adequately, capably, with the fresh energy of new beginnings. The 12 months smile, satisfied. The cycle continues. The year turns. Time flows forward as it must, as it always has, as it always will. From his place in the Hall of Memory, Father Time watches and feels peace. The word is inadequate, but it is the closest approximation. He has let go, and in letting go, he has discovered that everything the journey taught him was true. He has not disappeared, he has transformed. His work continues, even though he is no longer the one doing it. The moments he preserved matter, even though they are now past. His existence had meaning, even though it has ended. Saturn appears beside him in the Hall of Memory, not physically traveling there, but simply being there in the way that those who exist beyond ordinary time can be in multiple places simultaneously. "Well done," Saturn says quietly. "You have completed the journey. You have learned to let go. You have transformed with grace and courage, despite your fear, despite your resistance, despite everything in you that wanted to hold on forever." "Thank you," Father Time says, and his voice in this new form is softer, less solid, but no less real. "For showing me it was possible, for proving that transformation is real, that letting go does not mean ceasing to exist. You were the evidence I needed that this journey had a destination other than oblivion. And now you are that evidence for the next timekeeper," Saturn says with a smile. "When the new year completes his turn, when his time comes to let go, you will be here to show him what you were shown, to prove what was proven to you. The cycle continues, each of us teaching the next, each of us supporting those who walk the path we once walked. Father Time, though perhaps that name no longer quite fits, perhaps he is now simply the memory of last year, the archive of what was, settles into his new existence. He can see the new year working at the loom, gradually gaining confidence, slowly developing his own rhythm. He can see the 12 months cycling through their turns, each one doing their part, each one holding their season with the same care and purpose they always have. And he can see, somewhere beyond the observatory, beyond the Hall of Memory, even beyond the boundaries of existence as he understands it, he can see the seed he planted in May's garden, and it is sprouting. He will never walk in that garden again, will never see the plant mature, will never witness what it becomes, but he knows it is growing, and that knowledge is enough. His legacy continues, his work matters, his existence had meaning, and he has found peace in letting go. Time passes in the observatory. Minutes, hours, days. The new year works diligently at his loom, weaving moments into the tapestry of existence. He makes mistakes, certainly. Some threads tangle, some patterns emerge differently than intended. But the months are patient teachers, and the new year is a dedicated student. And slowly, gradually, the work improves. The cosmic clock ticks on, marking the passage of this new year, counting down toward the next midnight, when this new year too will need to learn to let go, will need to gather his own essences, will need to walk his own journey toward transformation. But that is still far in the future. For now, there is only the work, the weaving, the steady flow of moments being created and witnessed and woven into the great tapestry. In the Hall of Memory, the former Father Time rests among his peers, all the years that have been, all the timekeepers who have held the burden and released it, all the memories of time's turnings stretching back to the very beginning. He is at peace here, no longer carrying the weight of present responsibility, no longer required to witness every moment as it happens. And yet, he is not inactive, for memory is not passive, it is alive in a different way, foundational rather than active, supporting rather than creating. Every moment the new year weaves is built upon the moments Father Time wove. Every pattern that emerges draws upon patterns established in the past. The work continues because of the foundation, and the foundation exists because of the work that came before. One day, though day is perhaps the wrong word for time as it exists in the Hall of Memory, the former Father Time notices a visitor. It is a young child, curious and bright-eyed, wandering among the assembled memories of past years with the innocent wonder of one who has never experienced letting go. It is the new year, though some time has passed for him in the observatory, perhaps months, perhaps seasons. Time flows differently between the two realms, and measurement becomes less important than meaning. "Hello," the new year says, approaching the shimmering form of Father Time. "I've been wanting to visit you, to see where you are, to make sure you're—" He trails off, uncertain how to finish the sentence. "To make sure I'm real," Father Time suggests gently. "To make sure that transformation truly happened, that letting go truly led somewhere rather than nowhere." The new year nods, relief evident on his young face. "Yes, exactly that. I know I'm not ready yet. I'm still learning, still figuring out how to weave properly, still making mistakes every day. But I know that eventually my time will come. Eventually, I will need to walk the journey you walked, gather my own essences, learn my own lessons about letting go, and I'm already afraid." Father Time, or the memory of Father Time, or whatever he has become in this transformation, smiles with understanding. "Of course you are afraid. Every year is afraid. Every present moment dreads becoming past. It is natural, this fear. It means you are alive, engaged, caring about your work. But how did you do it? How did you find the courage to let go? How did you trust that transformation was real?"
Father Time gestures around the Hall of Memory at the countless past years gathered here, at the vast assembly of time's progression. "I looked at the evidence," he says. "I saw those who came before me, Saturn and all the others reaching back to the beginning. I saw that they had let go and still existed, transformed but not destroyed. That evidence gave me hope, and now I am that evidence for you, proof that the journey is real, that letting go leads somewhere, that transformation is possible." The new year looks around at the assembled memories, and his young face shows both fear and wonder. "Will you tell me about it?" he asks, about the journey, about the lessons you learned. I know my journey will be different. Each year's path is unique, but I want to know what to expect, want to understand what letting go actually means before my time comes to experience it myself. And so, Father Time, now memory, now foundation, now archive of what was, tells the story. He speaks of January's mirrors and February's ice garden. He describes March's battlefield and April's chaos. He recalls May's seed and June's weddings and July's tempting peak. He shares August's harvest and September's library and October's dying light. He tells of November's valley and December's palace and the gathering of 12 essences into an elixir of transformation. The new year listens with rapt attention, absorbing not just the facts but the emotional truth beneath them, that letting go is difficult but necessary, that transformation is frightening but real, that endings and beginnings are one ceremony viewed from different angles. Thank you, the new year says when the story is finished. I know that when my time comes, when I must learn to let go, I will still be afraid, but I will remember this conversation. I will remember that you were afraid too, and that you found the courage anyway. I will remember that transformation is real because you are here, because you exist as evidence that letting go does not mean disappearing. That is all any of us can do, Father Time says. Remember those who came before. Trust in the pattern that has held for eternity. And when our moment comes, step forward despite our fear into the transformation that awaits. You will do this too when your time comes. And when you do, I will be here, part of your foundation, supporting your transformation, just as those before me supported mine. The new year nods, understanding settling into him alongside his fear. He stands to leave, to return to his work at the loom, but he pauses at the edge of the hall. Will you watch? He asks. Will you see the moments I weave, the year I become, the work I do? I will, Father Time promises. Not every moment, that is no longer my task, and trying to witness everything would mean I had not truly let go. But I will watch sometimes, will check in occasionally, will see how the work continues, and I will be proud of what you create, will honor your patterns even when they differ from mine, will trust that your weaving is exactly what needs to be woven. The new year smiles, comforted and encouraged, and then he fades from the hall, returning to the observatory, to his work, to the present moment that is his to weave, and eventually to release.
Father Time settles back among the other memories, among the assembly of past years, and he feels something he never felt during his long ages of active service: completion. Not ending, not cessation, but the satisfaction of having done his work well, of having held his responsibility with care, of having learned when the time came to let go, of having transformed with courage despite overwhelming fear. His story is now part of the great story. His year is now part of the eternal cycle. His letting go is now part of the pattern that shows all future years that transformation is possible, that releasing is not defeat, but completion, that becoming memory is not less than being present, but different, foundational, essential in its own way. And in a garden that exists beyond time, beyond memory, beyond even the boundary of existence itself, A seed he once planted continues to grow. Its roots reach deep into soil, enriched by all that came before. Its stem pushes upward toward light that is both ancient and eternally new. It grows without him, because of him, carrying forward the legacy of his small act of faith, planting something he would never see mature, trusting that the future would continue, that his moment of care would matter even without his presence to witness it. This is the final wisdom, the ultimate lesson that can only be learned by living it, that existence has value even when it ends, that work matters even when we cannot see its results, that love continues even after the lover transforms into something else entirely, that every ending is a door and every beginning is a step through it, and the cycle turns forever, each of us holding time for our appointed season, and then, when the season ends, learning to let go with grace and courage and trust in the continuing story. Father Time, memory now, foundation, archive of what was, closes his eyes, though eyes is perhaps the wrong word for whatever sense he uses in this transformed state. He is at rest. He is at peace. He has completed his journey. He has learned to let go. And somewhere, in an observatory at the edge of reality, a cosmic clock ticks steadily onward, marking moments that are being woven into the great tapestry of existence by young hands that are learning, growing, gradually gaining the skill and confidence they will need when their own time comes to transform, to release, to let go. The story continues. The year turns. Time flows forward, as it always has, as it always will. And that, ultimately, is enough.